Lead me to some soul today. Oh, teach me.
Welcome, everyone, to episode number 48 of a series of episodes that we're calling Leading Others to Christ. And those of you that have been listening and watching know that during these episodes, we're going to be focused on evangelism. We have a lot of goals with this podcast. And one of them, for example, is to stir one another up to love and good works, but especially in the area of reaching our family, our friends, and our neighbors with the gospel of Christ. My name is Dan Barker, and I preach for the Creekside Church of Christ in Franklin, Indiana. For those, I've been doing this every time. For those of you that don't know, Franklin's about 20 miles south of downtown Indianapolis. And I also serve as one of the shepherds there. Those of you that know me know that I'm passionate about our topic. I obeyed the gospel when I was 21 years old in Owensboro, Kentucky. And ever since then, I've been anything I could get my hands on to read, anybody I could talk to, and to learn how to teach others. And I've been using some Bible phrases, of course, striving how to teach others, how to be a fisher of men and women, how to make disciples, how to persuade men and women. And also, I remind everybody each time of what Paul said to Timothy in 2 Timothy 2:2. And the things you've heard from me among many witnesses, commit these to faithful men, obviously women as well. Commit these to faithful men and women who will be able to teach others also. And then later on in that chapter, he uses a phrase that I really like. He tells Timothy to be useful for the master, prepared for every good work. So back last year when the COVID nonsense hit, I came up with this idea of doing a podcast and then try to identify those Christians, the men and women, fellow workers who are doing this, who are leading others to Christ. And once we've identified them, to interview them and find out, ask questions. How are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Where are you? And get some stories. And that's the kind of the quick backdrop on what we're doing here. Today, we're really excited. We've got two guys with it. We got two doctors today. I don't know what this means. We got two doctors, Bryan Nash and J.D. Souder. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us on. We're glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to do this. And what we try to do with this is I've got a simple outline, and you said you've listened to a couple of the episodes, so it'll sound familiar to you. But often what I do, I'm trying to learn how to be a good interviewer, but oftentimes people will say things and it'll just trigger, maybe to chase that rabbit a little bit, if you will, and to learn more about it. And we've learned a lot of things by doing things like that. But why don't we start out with what we call the elevator pitch or a short bio. JD, why don't you start us out and tell everybody, because not everybody knows us, right? Most people don't know us, but I'll speak for myself. I don't know about you guys, but tell everybody where you were born, how you learned the truth, and kind of bring us up to speed.
Well, my name's J.D. Souder. I was born here in Salem, Indiana, and grew up in a Christian home. So I was exposed to Jesus Christ from the cradle. And I was baptized when I was about 10 years old. I think looking back in retrospect, I was immature as 10-year-olds are, but really as I got into my teenage years, my early 20s, was really when I started understanding more what it means to follow Christ myself, really making my faith my own, rather than just kind of coasting along in the stream of being part of a church, but really diving into it myself, and being more active in the church, coming to study more of the word myself. I'm with the scrubs on. I'm a doctor of physical therapy, and really being able to understand, some of the opportunities that God has presented me in medicine, and understanding that in some ways as a ministry, as an opportunity to help people, an opportunity to lift people up, and an opportunity to connect with people. And that's really, I think, where sharing the gospel falls in there. Is if it's a detached kind of a thing, if the message of Jesus Christ is just something that I impose at people, it's not as fruitful, not as meaningful, not as true as when you have that connection with people. So really trying to utilize my practice as a physical therapist as a way to connect with people, sharing the blessings that God has blessed me with, and really using that for the cause of the kingdom.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And boy, I could go off on that. I mean, in a positive way, from the standpoint of opportunities that you have. And I'm afraid, and sometimes I really try to force myself. I don't want to get negative, but sometimes just reality, right, that we have. But I think there's others out there, perhaps, that have businesses, that have opportunities, are in contact with a lot of people, and perhaps Christ never comes up. They haven't made that connection of how God has blessed them with a huge opportunity, and they've never really learned how to not take advantage, but you know what I mean, to take advantage of the opportunity. But we could talk about that maybe as we go here. All right, Bryan, who are you? What?
That's a great question. I'm still trying to figure that out. No, I was born in Dallas, Texas. Probably knew, or maybe was around my wife a little bit as a kid. And Elise said to tell you hello. Would have been Elise Robinson.
Yeah, said hi too.
But we lived in Dallas until I was about 8, and then moved to the Birmingham, Alabama area, and grew up for the most part at the Gardendale Church of Christ. So similar to JD, I was brought up with a Christian family, and all the benefits and the blessings that brings. I ended up going to Auburn University and studied fisheries, catfish farming, if you want to be precise, and but found out that wasn't really the path that I wanted to end up going, and I started doing some preaching with Tony Mock was there at the time, and started preaching some with him. Ended up, first full-time place that I preached was in Pensacola, Florida, and then went to, well, as far as family goes, after Auburn, ended up getting married to Elise, who is Bill Robinson's daughter. I know you had Bill on the show earlier in the year. But then we ended up going to Pensacola and had our firstborn there. He had some health issues, and so we ended up moving back to Birmingham for a short time, and then eventually went to South Carolina. And then from South Carolina came here to Salem, Indiana, where we are now, Southern Indiana. And so JD and I are actually related, and I'm related to most of the town here, I think. But this is really where my mom was born, and I've got a lot of family on that side here. And so that's how we ended up here, was really through that connection.
Well, so y'all have known each other your whole lives, or no?
That's most of our lives.
We've got some pictures.
Okay,
you can share with your audience of our earlier years.
Yeah, we don't have to do that today, but that's all right. Yeah. But no, I think that's great. I don't know. I could go off on that. There's a reason Jesus sent the 70 out 2 by 2 and the 12 2 by 2. And, there's just so much power in working with someone else. And it seems like you guys do that, and you've got each other's back, and you're helping and encouraging each other. And we all need that. We all need a Barnabas in our life. But let's do this. Obviously, both of you are because of the work that you do and everything. I know before I do that, let's do it. Tell us a little bit about the congregation there where you are, Eastview. Tell us a little bit about the group.
Well, I can revert to JD on that first because he's been here a lot longer than I have. But.
Okay.
Now, I with my family, we came here about 20 years ago, and at the time it was a very small congregation, a dozen people or so. This part of the country, oftentimes there's a whole host of tiny country congregations scattered across the county.
Yes.
And this was one of those kind of situations. But really over the past 20 years, going from a tiny group, we are now a group of 50 to 60 most Sundays. And really, it's been encouraging to see not just the numerical growth, but really the growth of the group together,
Yes.
the growing in maturity. And I think that's sometimes a challenge for a smaller group. You get in a small group, you're familiar with everybody, and sometimes it gets easy to kind of coast or to just assume that the status quo is sufficient. But really, I think the group here does a good job of challenging one another to grow, to mature, obviously in our understanding of the word, but also to mature in our love, mature in our service. And I think that's been encouraging to see. So Bryan is our full-time preacher. We've got 3 shepherds. I'm one of 4 deacons here with the group here, and for being a congregation of our size, we're very blessed with the shepherds that we have. We've got good servant leaders in place, and really the idea of service is one that I think permeates the group here. That I'm really excited and blessed to be a part of this family here. And that's another thing. We're really rich on the language of family, of
Good.
loving one another as brothers and sisters, and even understanding. You mentioned earlier Paul and Timothy, and even some of the parent-child language. I'm blessed to have a lot of spiritual parents here that have brought me along, that have encouraged me to grow in Jesus.
Well, and I think some of that's an outgrowth of in a lot of smaller communities, and you know this, Dan, I'm sure, that a lot of communities that are historically farming communities, factory work communities, that sort of thing. You do have a lot of family units in those counties. A lot of people are related to each other and that kind of a thing. And I think that can then, create a situation where we can then talk about what is even more meaningful than blood family, because a lot of us around here are related in some way or another. That's just the nature of being in, these sorts of areas in the country. But there is family that transcends that. And I think that the congregation here does do a good job of using those conversations to then talk about what does it mean to be family in Christ.
All right. So good. Look at all the things we could talk about. Maybe it's just because I'm getting old. My mind just thinks of it. But, it's like how many people what's the population of Salem? Sorry. I just...
I should have looked it up. Yeah.
No. You didn't know I was going to ask that.
Yeah, I want to say 5,000, 8,000, somewhere in that vicinity.
Okay. Well, Franklin is 27, 28,000. So we're a metropolis compared to Salem. But no, I just, we've interviewed people from New York to LA to, all over the country. And this whole conversation of evangelism, really, it's the same, but it's different based on where we are, the communities that we're in. Like you're talking about a smaller congregation with so many blood family a part of it, going to some other communities where there's hardly any blood family there, and they're from all over the world, immigrants from different places, and blending and learning how to blend those into a spiritual family and a community is just that's a whole conversation within itself. But I really appreciate what you guys are doing there. It's exciting. I've asked this pretty much every time, but I'm going to put both of you on the spot a little bit. Why? Bryan, start with you. Why do you do what you do? Of all the things you could have done, you went to school, you had idea, dreams that you were going to do, those changed. Why are you so passionate about leading others to Christ?
Well, I listened to a few of your episodes, before we came on here, and so I had an idea you were going to probably ask that. And I think for a lot of people who preach, you can ask that question in different ways. There's times where I think we all ask the question, "Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Why do I do this?" And I think that question can take on different tones. And I have asked myself that question in times past with maybe different tones or inflections. And one of the things that I think I've really come to appreciate, realizing I'm not that old compared to some, but the older that I have gotten, there's a lot of people that know that when I was younger, my brother was killed in a car accident along with three other people that were in the congregation there. So there were 4 people from the local congregation where we worshiped that were killed in that wreck. And looking back on that, really, I would say the church, circling back around to this idea of family, the church was, in a very real sense, family. Church was kind of a respite. It was a place where I was well taken care of, where there were very meaningful relationships. And as I look back on that and reflect on that, I think that was incredibly formative for me. It was a safe place. It was, it was all these things that it was where I wanted to be. And I think that really did form me in profound ways, that growing up, I wanted to be very much a part of that, perhaps be a part of that for other people who needed that kind of a thing. And so I think that's a big aspect of it. It is interesting to kind of look back on a life story and to try the best we can, although we don't always know how God is at work through things, but to look back and to see kind of how the story unfolds, where God's hand is in the story. And one of the things I tell people is that I don't think that I really chose preaching as much as preaching chose me. And what I mean by that is I think that there's just certain things that unfolded in a certain way that put me where I am. And when we can start to think of our lives as a participating with what God wants to do in our lives and the lives of others, as joining this journey, as being a part of this adventure, if we can stay in that frame of mind, I think we stay motivated. As well as I do, how many people burn out doing this work. Yeah. And I think that people get up against a point where a lot of people struggle with just it being tedious, it feeling monotonous, it feeling like, are we really even accomplishing anything? And but if we can try to keep our minds on God is at work doing something through us, in us, that he wants to accomplish in the lives of other people. God is at work in the lives of other people. And if we can just join in what God wants to accomplish, it's an adventure. It's the greatest story of all time. And if we can keep our minds in that place, I think that's very helpful.
Oh, that is so good. The adventure, boy, so many things. I've said this several times now, but so many things we could talk about there. But another reason I wanted to do these podcasts, I think it's easy for us to kind of get caught up in our own community, in our own work, and not realize what's going on out there. And we if we're not careful, we see the church everywhere, must be just like it is here in Salem or in Franklin, right? And we know that it's not, or it's like, am I the only one doing this kind of work? Am I the only one interested in event? We have to be careful thinking that way. But that's what's been so fun for me, to be able to give, not that you guys need it because you have some of your own platforms, but people an opportunity to talk and tell their story and to be encouraged. It's like, Bryan, I think we met one time, but maybe I was wrong. But obviously, I made a big impression on you because you don't remember me. But just the encouragement, just to be able to know that I've got around 50 new friends now. Some of them I knew before, but I've got them on my contact manager. We're friends on Facebook, and I can pick them up since we did this, and the little bond is formed there, and there's a lot of communication that's going on. And that to me is really exciting. So to help encourage each other, and it can be tiring and exhausting, but we got to keep that fire going, don't we?
Yeah, well, and I'd also say, just thinking back through my own life story, thinking about the people who were influential on me or helpful to me. Bill Hall preached at Gardendale for a time while we were there. Jeff May's another one. Men who I felt like took a real interest in me that I have great memories with. And again, I think we're spurred on to, in some ways, follow in the footsteps of people that we have respected and looked up to.
Oh, I agree. All right. What about you, JD?
So why do I do what I do?
Yeah. Why do you?
Okay. Well, and I suppose I could go a couple different directions with that. As far as I mentioned earlier, my career, and I know many of the guests that you've had on, have been preachers, and are working in that role in a congregation. I guess for me, I've always been, interested in health and interested in the sciences and things like that. And I always knew that I wanted to go into medicine in some capacity. Yeah. But I had an opportunity when I was about 19 or so. I was volunteering in a hospital, and they put me in the rehab department and really established some mentorships there. People that invested, as Bryan mentioned, people that invested in me as a young person, and that really made an impact on me, and just the connection with people, both colleagues as well as with patients or clients. That connection that I think is really fundamental in a therapy setting, but it's fundamental to human relationship, right? Yeah. And really life. I've come to understand life is about connection. It's about relationship, and utilizing that. I'm not in this alone. I'm not a lone wolf. And sometimes I think, whether just as Christians or when we're preaching, it's easy sometimes to think, well, I'm in this alone. I have my responsibility to do it, and it's up to me. And if I fail, then. But really, when we see the body, see the church as a family, we're in this together. When we see the church as a body, no body part is up to its own. We are working collectively, and I think understanding that, partially led me into my career in medicine, but also kind of in this podcast space, right? Bryan and I have been doing our podcast together for, I guess, almost 2 years now, and it's been really encouraging, as you mentioned earlier, to get to know other people, to get to spread the word of God. There's really this idea of broadcasting the seed. It's one thing when I have a relationship with one person that I'm really trying to talk with them about Jesus Christ, but we've had feedback from around the world, and what a blessing that is. I mean, and you look at the New Testament, and Paul didn't necessarily know every person that he was writing his letters to.
No.
He said in Romans, I hope that I get to meet you. And say hi to so and so. I know that they're in Rome there with you. And I think that getting to know people who don't just live inside my community. I've never met you personally, but I cherish this opportunity to get to relate with you and to connect with you and to share Jesus with you. And I think that the podcast really provides a wonderful tool there for us to connect with people, to share the Word of God, and to grow together, not only in the body local, in the local church, but in the body collectively outside of my local community.
Both. We might need to follow this up with another interview, but there's so many things to talk about. But yeah, the podcast, how old are you guys? How old are you, JD?
36.
36. Bryan?
35.
35. Okay. I'm almost combined with the two of, no, I'm 75. But no, I mean, just looking at the technology, you talk about evangelism, and you go back in the Bible, and, if they went anywhere, they walked, they maybe rode a camel or a donkey, or they got on a ship, but now that we can get on this and with all the technology, and I can be face to face doing a Zoom with somebody in Nigeria or wherever, it blows my mind. And for an old guy to learn, that's why I've got Matt Maldwin helping me, because he's the tech guy. But to be able to learn how to use these tools to best to do the work that we're trying to do. And there's a lot of ideas that are coming out of this, but which we're excited about. Let's talk about the Devotional Doctors real quick. And tell me, you said you've been doing the podcast for a couple of years. Tell us what your thoughts were behind that, and what you've learned. Whoever wants to go first.
Well, I think you tell our origin story better. So.
Okay. Well, so when I came here, I had, which has been over 2 years ago, I had kind of played around with the idea of doing some sort of a blog or just something about like your spiritual prescription for the day, that kind of a thing.
Yes.
And JD had talked about the idea of a podcast, and with him being a physical therapist, we kind of, I think, put those ideas together and said, well, what if we try to create something really about what does it mean to be whole? And one of the things that we try to come back to is the idea of holy. And really at the root of the word holy is to be a person who is whole. What sin does to us is it separates us. It makes us not whole with God, not whole with others, not whole with ourselves. And really the good news is that we can be people who are whole. We can be restored. And so we try to kind of integrate that from different perspectives. What does it mean to be truly healthy? To be truly flourishing? And that there are aspects of the gospel that are, yes, it's forward looking, it's eternal, but it also is a present reality as well. It's also to change us right now. And it ought to be something that restores us in the future, but it's also restorative for us right now. And so that's kind of what we try to talk about is, healthy mind, body, and soul kind of a thing.
I have listened to part of one. Apologize, I didn't have time to but it's on my to-do list here to listen to some, and because several of the names that you've interviewed there in your podcast, I know them now and have interviewed them, and that's kind of fun. But from a therapy, JD, I wanted to, when I was in the fourth grade, I had a basketball coach in Owensboro, Kentucky. And he motivated me from that time on. Or anybody ever said, Danny, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a basketball coach. And so then I learned that I had to have a degree to do that. And then what was I going to get the degree in? Then I got it and it was back during President Kennedy, and there was all this emphasis on physical health and physical education. So I got the degree in health and physical education. And so I coached for 12 years. And so the whole physical thing was a big, I wish I was in as good a shape now as I was then, but we're working on it. But yeah, the importance of that is I think missed by so many. I mean, and again, we'd have to do another show to talk about all that. But I had the opportunity my first job really was at the athletic director and head basketball coach at Florida College there in Temple Terrace in the Tampa area. And one of the guys that I never had met him before, a guy named Homer Haley. And he would come over to the gym every day and exercise. Well, he was I saw him, I was only 23. I saw him as an old guy. And he used to come in and do pull-ups and push-ups and all these different things. And I remember I thought you'd find this interesting, but he said, 1 Timothy 4:8, Paul said that bodily exercise profits little. But he said, but that little, it's so important to me. I'm going to work out every day. I just thought that was a cute thing. But and I got to do this real quick too. Doctor. Okay. I'm not a doctor, but one time I went to a restaurant and the server came back and said, and handed me my credit card back and said, "Thank you, Dr. Barker." And I went, she walked away and I went, "What is that all about?" And I looked at the card and I had never thought, my initials are DRB. And so they had put on the card, Dr. Barker, Dr. Barker. So maybe I should steal that and start using that again, but I don't know. But devotionaldoctors.com, is that the best way to get to it?
Yeah, devotionaldoctors.com. We've got a Facebook page. Any podcast platform you can find us. Just search for Devotional Doctors.
Okay, great. Well, that's really exciting, and keep that up. I think that's really motivational. All right, I end every episode with a couple of things. One, if we could do this real quick, we're going to go a little bit over, but that's all right. Conversion story. Think about somebody that you've studied with or worked with in the past that ended up becoming a Christian. And would you mind sharing that with us? I know you have more than one, but maybe JD, start us out.
Well, kind of going back to, I don't know, trying to think of someone who came to the gospel or came to Jesus. Really, the place that I tend to think of in that story is really myself. I didn't, while I did grow up in a Christian home, and I might have grown up as a good kid, right?
Yes.
That doesn't mean that I was being made in the image of Christ. I was being a good kid. I got baptized because that's what good Christian kids are supposed to do at a certain age. But I didn't do it because I was in love with God. And really, as I've grown and matured, and really seeing conversion not just as a one-time thing. Well, I got baptized, so now I'm therefore all the Christian I ever need to be. But really understanding it as an ongoing process that we are day by day being saved, right? And really trying to understand myself better as a part of someone who is being converted and being remade in the image of Jesus Christ. I found that helps me then to understand when I'm talking with somebody, or trying to share Jesus with them, or even with talking with my brothers and sisters in the body. It helps lend to patience. It helps lend to understanding this as a process that we are growing together, that it's not just a one-time, now you become all the Christian that you ever need to be, but understanding conversion as an ongoing growth. I think really understanding my own growth in that way has then helped me to relate and connect to people, both within the church and outside of the body.
You know what? I'm not so sure that might be one of the most fundamental things, right? We're supposed to be able to give a reason why we have the hope that we do, and to be able to tell your own story and share your own experiences, and not with just other Christians, but with your patients and the people you come in contact with. Because the Bible's full of stories. I mention this all the time too, but let's think about the characters in the Bible those are stories that God gave us, right? And what we learned from their victories and their failures and whatever. But no, I think that's really good, JD, that you.
Yeah, and you see Abraham growing. You see Moses growing and learning. You see Paul growing and learning. And I think understanding those stories in that way, rather than they start here and they stay there forever. And they've all got pitfalls, and they've all got this journey, as we've talked about, and this growth. And I think it's really, as you said, really fundamental to understanding that we're all growing, and we can grow together as the body.
I tell people all the time I'm 75, but I'm still a work in progress. And I was telling somebody the other day, I said, he's 78. And I said, well, Moses, God didn't call Moses till he was 80. And look at the job he gave him to go to Egypt. But anyway, all right, Bryan, what's the story that you have? Conversion.
Yeah, so one that I think about is being in Pensacola, the first place that I had ever preached really on a consistent, regular, full-time basis. And it being a Sunday night. And after the sermon is over on Sunday night, you extend what we call an invitation, as traditional to do. And a young man comes down the aisle and sits down. I've never seen him before. Nobody there's ever seen him before. And so I sit down and start talking to him, and he says that he wants to be baptized. And so I'm kind of wondering, well, what is that? Nobody knows who this guy is. He just comes into our service that night. And so I sit there and talk to him for a while and figure out that he fully understands and knows what he's doing. He had in times past talked with a relative, I want to say it was an uncle maybe, who had really studied with him, taught him, but at that time he didn't move forward with it. But he got to a point in his life where he basically pulled out the phone book, found his uncle, I think if that's who it was, went to a Church of Christ. And so he looked up in the phone book, a Church of Christ, came and worshiped with us that Sunday night. And we did, he was baptized. And that was the first time that I had baptized somebody. And thinking about that story, in that story, what did I do? Really very, very little. And I always like to be reminded of that I think that sometimes in these conversations, we can almost approach it from sort of a business model kind of a thing, or we're going to pull, what's the latest 5 tips and tricks,
right?
And that kind of a thing. When in reality, when I step back, who really is the one who's working? Ultimately, it's God and what God is doing.
Absolutely.
And even when we look at the book, something like the book of Acts, really what the apostles are doing is really just trying to keep up with what God is doing, with what the Holy Spirit's doing. They're really just trying to keep up with that, and sometimes they're not doing a great job. Even they're kind of behind behind things, so to speak. Like Peter, he's not fully where he needs to be, but I think just to be reminded of that. And so that's one that I think of. And then with his baptism, we did end up, baptizing several others who were friends of his. But again, what did I do in that? Really nothing, other than be the one up front for when he came down the aisle and said, I was taught however many years ago, but today I decided I want today to be the day. And again, a reminder to me that we often do, while our work is important, there's someone at work far more than anything that we might be doing.
Yeah, and how all that comes together is just fascinating. And you think about the providence of God, which I love to think about it and talk about it. Don't understand it completely, because God's doing things that we can't see and don't understand. And but yeah, just like him coming down that time, and the contacts that he made with other family and friends, that's just fascinating. All right, we're out of time. We're already past time. One thing, if somebody's listening and they're thinking, you know what, I know this is part of my responsibility as a Christian is to share and to talk to others about Christ. And these guys have got to be motivated. So what would you say to somebody that's listening and they're wanting to get started? And you've heard me do this. There's more than one thing, but what would you say to somebody that says, I want to learn how to lead others to Christ? What would you say to them, JD?
I'd say give it a try and be patient. Well, one of the things in my practice, for patience, I have to preach patience, PATIENC. Yes. And healing doesn't happen overnight. I have to be patient as a practitioner. They have to be patient as a patient. And as Christians, we have to be patient. Sometimes we have to wait. As Bryan mentioned, God is at work and we don't always understand his timeline, but be patient, wait for the Lord. When we're talking with someone, work, but be patient. There's work to be done, but allow yourself some grace, allow patience to play its role there as well.
I love that. I really do. Can I use that? Can I steal that from you? I want to use that.
Absolutely. I stole it from Paul, so go for it.
There you go. That's right. All right. Well, Bryan, what would you say? One thing.
The thing that comes to my mind is prayer, which I think is something that's often can be overlooked in some of these conversations. That I know sometimes in local congregations, as preachers are working with a congregation or with elders, oftentimes they might be called upon to give some sort of a report of what they've been doing, or especially people in another country, sending back a report. And one of the things that I've thought about with some of those is that I think we tend to place such a value on doing stuff. This is what I did. I had this, I went here and then I went there and I had this study and I had this one, and I've got the thing I do on Monday and I've got the thing I do on Tuesday, and then I've got the one on Thursday night, and I've got, and I'm just struck sometimes of how little we talk about prayer. Again, it's almost as though we think we're doing this all on our own. And if we just do more and more and more, we'll see more and more results. And just in my own limited experience, I think there's just a great mystery to how a lot of things unfold. And the more that we can spend reflecting on God's involvement, spending time with God, I think that's where we then, there's just mysterious opportunities that then open up. And the old cliche adage maybe that less is more. But I think there's times where that can be the case, where we almost busy ourselves so much that we want people to notice what we're doing. And we might be failing to see that it's actually God who's doing it. And perhaps if we spent even more time with him, we might see more opportunities at the end of the day.
So patience and prayer. I love it. It's good. Yeah, the power of God. We forget who our Father is. We forget just how powerful he is. And he is the one that's to get the glory. He's the one. Without him, we wouldn't even be talking, right? We wouldn't be having this conversation. So listen, guys, I really, I look forward to meeting. I've said this to so many, but I really do. We're not that far away from each other. But I look forward to meeting you guys, and maybe we can hook up sometime for lunch or something and get to know each other even better. But thank you. I know you're both busy. Appreciate you taking the time to do this today. And I'm looking forward to getting to know you better. Love you guys, and keep up your good work.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless you as well.
Thank you. Thank you for all the good you're doing.
Thank you. Give God the glory.
My heart and and fill my life. Give me one soul today.